Why are 84% of photographers failing? What is it about photography that has such a high failure rate? Let's look into this, because I think you can all learn a lot from this. I can certainly learn a lot from this, and hopefully you'll avoid these pitfalls. Now, first of all, where's this stat from? The stat is from the university checklist thing, the census. It says that only 16% of graduates find meaningful employment in photography for 14 months or longer after graduating. I don't know why 14 months is like yes, that is now official rather than 12, but there we go. Now, of course, as you know, not all of us come from that background, myself included, but I think it's a good statistic to look at. Now, yes, out of those 84%, a lot of them just, changed their mind, don't want to do it. But if we assume that also lots of people who didn't go that path tried to do it, like, the rate of failure in this industry is insane. And there's a really good reason for it. We're going to start off with something which there's nothing you can do about. You've got to suck it up. And then we're going to follow on to the next point, which is really where you can make the difference. So first of all, photography. It's a pretty cool job. It is pretty cool. Like, this is my studio. I come to my studio every day. I've got my cool music playing in the background. I've got my little worker's jacket on. I've got really cool kits. I've got like Cambo cameras. I've got Broncolor Hazies. We've got all the tech and nerdy stuff I might want. I've got computers, a nice office space, and I get paid a premium sum of money for it all. Life is good. Life is pretty good. I'm very, very blessed. I count my blessings every day. My gratitude levels are off the scale. I've really landed on my feet. This is a cool job. Now, if you try and find a cool job, which also pays very well, there's going to be a lot of interest in it. It's the same with anything. If you're in the UK, like football or soccer, if you're American, is the sport. Every boy in the playground, apart from me, because I played the violin, I was not cool. But every boy in the playground, they wanted to be a football player. It pays an astronomical amount of money, but there's not many jobs in it. Most of them fail. But for whatever reason, fellow photographers, we don't seem to look at our career like this. I don't know why, but there seems to be some bit of entitlement where it's like, well, why can't I be a photographer? Well, because you can't. It sucks, but you can't. It is incredibly competitive. There's not many jobs. It pays a lot of money. It's a very cool, sexy job. Lots of people want to do it. That is a recipe for disaster. Now, there's very little you can do about that. That is what it is. That is also why you're attracted to it, I'm sure. Like, I love coming in here and going, oh, look at my little toys. This is fun. And yes, look at the paycheck. That's nice. That was a good amount of money for a day's work. But to achieve that, you have to do something. And that something is not necessarily something people want to do. Now, I am a numbers man because that's where my background is academically. And I know my average working week is 70 hours. 90 hours, don't even sniff at that. I do a rolling 2-week work schedule. I do a 7-day week followed by a 5-day week, but I also work in the evenings and in the evenings on the weekends. But I'm at home every other weekend because, well, our kids, they're with the dad one weekend, with us the other, and I spend the weekend that they're with us at home unless I absolutely have to come into work. I work 9 to 5:30, which everyone's like, yeah, that seems reasonable. Get home, do the kids' routine, and then I get my laptop out. This is actually now at my coasting phase. The work leading up to this point was insane. It has cost me relationships, my hairline, my waistline. It has cost me any hobbies, any friendships, because it is so sought after, there is no space for anything else. I see it like an elite sport. If I want to go to the Olympics, I can't go down the pub on Thursday night. But if I train hard and I commit fully to it, then I can. Now, photography is a sliding scale. Not everyone wants to work in the way I do. Not everyone works at the level I do. Some work above, some work below. There's a whole myriad of things. There's also all the other things like nepotism and all that. But to be honest, in my industry, nepotism counts for like 2 people. It's not a big deal. It's an excuse that as people who come from the council estate used to go, well, the reason I didn't make it is because my dad wasn't blah, 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 blah. My dad can't speak English properly and he worked in a factory. It doesn't stop you. But it is an easy excuse to make. And often when I feel that things are not going well and I see somebody has got a job, who's got a parent, who's like a creative director in an ad agency, yeah, it smarts a bit, but it's rare. It's not actually enough to change your career path. But there we go. Anyway, so this is what you need to do if you want this career. Number 1, you need to commit fully to it. You need to accept that little things are going to have to go away in the working towards it, because you don't get the good money until you get there. You can't have fancy cars on finance or fancy cars at all. You can't have new clothing. You can't be going out for dinners all the time. You can't have the latest and greatest camera gear. When you see a behind the scenes shot of me shooting on a £100,000 camera with about £500,000 worth of lighting in the background, didn't start with that. You know, and also it's rented. When you see me in this studio space here and it looks all cool, a lot of this kit was very cheap. I've accumulated it over a decade, and like, I didn't start this way. You don't jump into this. My first studio had 3 speed lights, a wall of AA battery chargers because the electric was free, I think, or at least I didn't pay for it. I was charging batteries all day. I'd got one white scoop of paper and that was it. That was me ready to go. Before that, I worked for my bedroom. I had a 5D original, a 50D, a couple of cheap prime lenses and a couple of speed lights. That was it. You have to work hard. It takes time. It took me 15 years to get to here today. That is the bit that people don't want to do. People don't want to do the 15 years. People don't want to do the working to this point. People don't want to make the sacrifices. And I know this because every time I think about quitting, it's because I don't want to make the sacrifices anymore. Today, I saw a friend who I've not seen for years, like 5 years or something nuts like that. It makes me think, maybe I don't want to make these sacrifices anymore to have this job. Maybe I'd like to go and do something easier. But fundamentally, me as a human, I'm an elitist, I'm a competitive person, and I like to work towards the best thing. And that's what I want to do. If you're not that person, this career probably isn't for you. And a big reason why only 16% of graduates end up in the industry is because no one tells them this. No one says, by the way, if you want to be a photographer, it's nearly impossible. If you want to be a photographer, it's going to take over your entire life. If you think you're going to have a hobby, I don't think so. My hobby is going for a run at 11 o'clock at night in the dark, because that's my free bit of time. That's my hobby. And it's mostly as well to like de-stress myself a bit. But there's no time for hobbies. There's no time for extracurricular activities. And I know this because I had periods in my career where I took my foot off the gas and I went, oh, let's go out every night. Let's go to the parties. Let's go and do this at the weekend. And I stagnated and I stopped where I was. I didn't progress. And the point where I was didn't work as a business. Photography for me started at the bottom and moved my way up. But before, all of these bits here were not viable long term. They were stepping stones to where I am today. Doing the jobs for £500 a day or £1,000 a day do not make you enough money to actually be a photographer. And the problem is, if you've had a day job, you go £1,000 a day, that's a lot. You don't work every day. That doesn't happen. And your overheads are huge. It's not like getting a salary from your 9-to-5 job. It's a very different like world mindset mentality. You also have to be really good with money. When a big paycheck comes in, the temptation is to go, right, let's get ourselves a nice Mercedes-Benz. I don't know why Mercedes is like my premium car brand of choice. I think it's a Mercedes-Benz. This is going to be really embarrassing if it's not. Go on, we'll get a nice watch, nice little Patek watch. You know, we'll mosey on around with all that money, then we realise we get no jobs for 6 months. You have to be disciplined and ready to like really put your career before everything else. And that is difficult. And I found it even more difficult since having a family, because they obviously take priority. And it is always a balancing act, which I almost always get wrong. But I feel like this is not information people share. I don't feel like there's anyone on the internet going, yes, you can become a photographer, but it's nearly impossible. It's very hard. It'll wreck your life and it might not be for you. So maybe it's not for you, and that is fine. I have friends who are hobbyist photographers who are far more talented than me, but they didn't want this life. And that is absolutely fine. It doesn't make them any less of a photographer than I am. They are still a photographer. If anything, they're more of a photographer because they shoot for the pure passion of shooting. I shoot to pay the bills. Very different thing. I hope these ramblings have been of interest to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.